From Capitol Hill to Wall Street, this is Politics and Profits with your host, Rick Amato.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Rick Amato. It's time for Politics and Profits.
We follow the trends on Capitol Hill that lead to the profits on Wall Street. We expose the hard facts of what your elected officials are doing when you're not looking. And we show you how you can profit from their politics. The American dream is alive and well, and you can be proud to call America your home. And now, it's Rick Amato.
Broadcasting from the Liberatory CPA studios, this is Politics and Profits. I'm Rick Amato. We continue our memory of 9/11 and what it means to our guests around America. Joining me at this time is a longtime friend of the show, longtime friend of myself, from Fremont, California. Many of you know him as the Cigar Marine. He lit up the cigar out with the lid of his tank open as the fall of the statue of Saddam occurred. An AP reporter captured that image and went around the world the next day. And my next guest, Nick Popaditch, from that day forward, became known as the Cigar Marine. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rick.
9/11, what does it mean to you?
You know, on the day, it became a lot more over the years, over the course of the war. When it happened, I was angered like most Americans were. But I was a United States Marine. I'd been a career Marine. And I guess seeing the citizens of our country attacked, because you're in danger out as a Marine, and you expect that. You gladly step forward to that. But those were Americans just going to work that day. And that's just dirty.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Is it something that was on your mind on that day?
Well,
go ahead.
We've been dealing with terrorism since the 80s, since it was kind of something we always knew as Marines, as service members. You always knew that terrorism was something there, but it's never something that came and hit us like that. And I think it was a big awakening to a lot of Americans. There's a lot of people out there in the world that really don't like our way of life and what we represent. That we represent freedom around the world, and there's people out there that the oppressors of the world that like to take a shot at us. And I like the response to it, the fact that we didn't take it lying down. It emboldened us as a nation. It brought us together as a nation.
You talk about the oppressors. It takes me to my next topic here. Kim Jong-un. Of course, he's running an oppressed society there in North Korea. Does Donald Trump, does America really have any options here? The president...
Certainly. People like him, they only understand force. And you have to respond in the manner that he has, that Secretary of Defense General Mattis has responded, to let him know you're not going to bully us. You may have gotten away with that for the past 20 years. You may have gotten him and his father gotten away with it with some of our previous administrations. You're not going to get away with it with him. They only understand one thing. They only understand force, a credible threat of it and use of it. Absolutely.
Now, but some are saying, Steve Bannon, in fact, who just left the White House, is saying that the U.S. can't attack first, even though that may be our warning, because any attack on North Korea would lead to tens of millions of deaths in South Korea.
Oh, certainly. It would have to be a preemption is a matter of our defense, though. If somebody's waving a gun, you don't wait till they shoot first. If you have the means to hit them before they shoot you. And he's certainly doing that. I think the only reason we haven't to this point is we don't take him. We know when I think the people in charge, the president, the Secretary of Defense, they know when he's really making a threat and when he's just grandstanding for his people.
Really?
I believe so. I believe that they thought he was really going to hit us with one of those missiles. We'd already knocked that country flat. I think when they think it's a legitimate threat, they'll move.
What would a war with North Korea look like?
Well, it would certainly involve a lot of air because they are a big conventional army. They are a big army. The terrain is very restrictive. There's a lot of mountains there, a lot of canyons. We train for it every year. As a Marine, I used to go overseas to Korea almost on a yearly basis and practice defending the South Korea, and also the offensive possibility. That is also a possibility as well.
I've been reading that the U.S. is training South Korean officials, not officials, but military members, on how to assassinate, how to take out Kim Jong-un. Now, when I read that, I'm thinking that article's been placed there strategically. That article has been released to the media strategically because if you're going to assassinate someone, you're not going to tell the world you're practicing. What are your thoughts on that?
Not my specialty, I must say, but I would say, yeah, if that was released, it was certainly for a political effect to let him know that we can take it. I certainly believe that we can take him out anytime we want it, and probably the reason we never have is because the next possibility would be just as bad. You would have another lunatic and a less stable government over there. I mean, ideally, what you want to have happen over there is you want the people to finally rise up, because there's millions of people living there who are living in starvation, squalor, poverty for Kim Jong-un, and I think it's time those people stood up and said, we've had enough, which I think is the preferred option that our nation is trying to force. And I think the more they can delegitimize him, the more they can undermine his standing in the world, because these third world people like him, they gain power, they gain credibility by standing up to us. And when we've had previous administrations that have backed down, it makes them look more bold in their people's eye. And now that we have a president that's put him in his place, I think his standing and his people will get weaker and weaker, and hopefully they'll rise up and say, we've had enough of this. This freedom happening just to the south of that parallel looks pretty good. We might want to jump on board with that.
Wait, so you approve? You approve's the wrong word, but you support what it is that this administration's approach to North Korea?
Absolutely, absolutely, because they're a rogue nation. They operate. They operate with impunity, and I think it's time we finally held them accountable for what they do. Embargo them, isolate them, and what he's doing with China, I think, is very smart. Say if you take away his friends, the more isolated he gets. And our big power is we are the world's market. And if you start threatening your goods coming into our country, saying, hey, we might slap a tax on there, that makes people come on board with what we're doing a little more.
Anything else you believe that this president should be doing that he's currently not doing as it relates to North Korea?
When he was campaigning, there were some things he used to say that used to, because I'm a Trump supporter. I am a big supporter of the president. And there were some things he used to say, though, when it came to international, that used to trouble me a little bit. Because one of the things I really believe in is that we are freedom in the world. And we should be around the world, taking liberty around the world. And I didn't think he was really on board with that particular thing. And I think General Mattis, who was a big Enlightenment thinker, I served under him. I used to hear him talk. He always inspired me. He always said that we are going to share our courage with the world. We're going to take freedom around the world. And I think people underestimate how big that is. People would always put down the idea of nation building. We're not out there building nations. We're making free, liberty-loving nations around the world. And terrorism does not grow in free nations. Look at the world. Where does terrorism grow? It always grows in oppressive regimes. Never grows in freedom. So we're not building nations just for the fun of it. It makes the world more free. It makes the world more safe. I've always believed in it. I think the previous couple administrations have never sold that to the American people, have never told the American people exactly what we're trying to do there. And in a couple cases, I think perhaps didn't even believe in it as much as I did.
Nick Popaditch, the Cigar Marine. Always good to catch up with you. Thank you for catching up with us today as we remember 9/11, I should say, and with your thoughts on North Korea.
Thank you, sir.
And when you get back down to Southern California, give us a shout. And now it's time for reporter Brian Brady with today's market report.
Since the Great Recession, millennials have been renting in urban locations, but that might be ending in the next decade. Millennials are getting older. The leading edge of that generation is now 35. And while they might not be getting married, birth rates are going up. Folks with kids are going to want a house with a yard and good access to schools. These properties are in the suburbs. Smart money investors are buying single-family homes, so much that almost 15% of the new single-family homes are being purchased by rental investors. There's a shortage of shelter. Now, we can be indifferent about whether suburban homes should be owned or rented, but the fact is, there are not enough of them to handle the millennial generation. The trend is changing. The millennial renting downtown has been a powerful story, but only Peter Pan never grows up. As this generation ages, they will move to the suburbs, and that bodes well for single-family home investors. I'm Brian Brady, your Politics and Profits Real Estate Trends reporter. Great. We get it?
Politics and Profits with Rick Amato is brought to you by Liberatory Accounting, the IRS problem solvers. To find out how Liberatory Accounting can help you, call 877-6-SOLVER. That's 877-6-SOLVER.